Well, good afternoon, everybody. Bill here with Sports Fan Outreach. Hope you're having a good week. We're having one here. We've had a good week preaching this week. I've been in Tampa some, and I was just telling Pat we were down there. They're actually having this, I think it's called the Student Action. Charlie Kirk's down there. He's having a meeting down there, a big conference, a bunch of folks down there. So I usually am not, I try to sort of avoid political environments, but it was a good spot. Some Christians in the crowd came up, and they were glad to see my buddy Evan Johnson and me. So it's been a good week here. Hope you're having a good week preaching somewhere. This week we've got Pat Rauh on to talk to him about his ministry, his preaching ministry, and then going to Nashville for the Music City Grand Prix. So we're going to bring Pat on. Pat, how you doing?
Doing fantastic. How are you, Bill?
Good, good. So thanks for coming on. And you having a good week?
I'm having a great week.
What is a typical week for you in a sense of what makes it a good week for you?
Well, I work for Fujifilm. I've been with Fujifilm for 26 years now, and I work out of my house. And I've always had a home office, but since COVID, it's traveling is kind of a rarity. But I'm just very blessed to be in the house. My wife homeschools our children, so we have all of our meals together. It's just an ideal situation. Just one of the many ways in which God is just blessing my life. It's an ideal work-home situation.
Praise the Lord. So homeschooling, we homeschool too. So how did y'all get into homeschooling? What have you found to be, in a sense, the most surprising benefit to homeschool?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, my wife was a former school teacher. She had been a teacher for 8 years when I met her, so she's naturally predisposed towards teaching. And she had our girls reading when they were 3 years old. Yeah. So they're at this point they're light years ahead of all the other kids their age. So it's a wonderful thing. It's part of it's not just the scholastic benefits of letting them work at their own pace, but it's also the benefits of saving them from the culture, so to speak. It's when we see, what goes on in the culture, and it's just getting worse and worse, especially as it applies to school. We just are so thankful that we're kind of controlling their environment here at home. That I didn't foresee when we started this, but now it's certainly apparent, but what an advantage it is.
Y'all have a homeschool co-op, or?
Yes.
Do y'all participate in that?
Yes, yeah, we do have a co-op. It's CC. I'm drawing a blank on what that stands for.
That's good.
Classical Conversations.
Oh, yeah, okay, sure, all right. That's famous.
Yeah.
I don't know about y'all, but my wife and I think both of us, we just, the being raised in the school environment, and you just keep reflecting, comparing the homeschool thing to the school. What's really interesting about school, I think she pointed out to me, or somebody did, going to school in a school and you have, 12 years of being around people all day long. It's a pretty intense, relational environment. We could say it like that. And it's pretty unusual in life. The rest of life doesn't really reflect school, or especially high school when you're older. And so I guess my point here is reflecting on the impact the school had, and trying to want that for the kids. It's just kind of an annoying thing, but you realize that the goal of school is not, not the high school experience. It's learning something and being prepared for life. I think really for me especially, trying to figure out, okay, what are you trying to do when you're going to school? What's the long-term goal? Stuff like that. Protecting your kids. What do you teach them? What are you trying to train them? I think it helps you answer questions way beyond just the scope of going to this school to go to class.
Right.
What do you think?
Right. Yeah, that's true. And socialization is people that are critics of homeschooling. that's the first thing they always go to, is like, oh, they're going to lose out on all the socialization. And of course, for Christians, it's like we're trying to keep them from a lot of that socialization.
Right.
And but when I first, but before I was involved in homeschooling with my own kids, it kind of, it seemed to, maybe there is something to that. But then my wife and I both noticed before we had our children that the kids that we knew that were homeschooled from church, they were the nicest,
Yeah.
most outgoing,
Yeah.
most unassuming kids that there was. So it's like, I don't think that this is a problem, so,
Right.
and that has proven to be the case. And then, now that my kids are involved in it, and, they're very sociable, and, without all of the bullying that they might go through, and the mocking and the ridicule at school, they're much more, comfortable with themselves than maybe they otherwise would be in the social setting of school. So it's all been very much positive.
That's so cool. Cool. All right. So we were talking earlier, you work for Fujifilm. And so I want to ask you about the camera, but tell me about, like, give a synopsis of both your experience at Fuji and then, the technological change and really the film business, the camera business that you personally have seen and watched develop.
Well, when I started with Fuji in 1996, it was before digital. It was, disposable
Yeah.
cameras,
Yeah.
film. That was everything, and it was kind of a cash cow for us. It was a very profitable business. But then when everything went digital, of course, Fuji's involved in the printing end of photographies too. So the photo labs. All of the photo printing equipment in, say, a Walmart, for instance, it's all Fuji
Oh,
equipment.
really?
Yeah, all of the consumables. So I actually sell all of that type of equipment, not just the cameras. But when things went digital, a lot of that business rapidly declined. It was really kind of a catastrophic decline and a total upheaval of the photography business. But then digital cameras came on, and they developed really quickly. And for 10 years, they were just the hottest thing that you could buy. Every Christmas, the number one gift for probably 10 years was a digital camera. But then the digital camera phone, and they warned us about it, 2 years in advance, that they're developing an iPhone camera, and at some point it's going to start cannibalizing digital camera sales. And of course that has happened to a great degree. But it's been really interesting, though, is that in this world of technological advances that we all live in, is, back in the days of film, we'd have a film camera, it'd last for 5 or 10 years. Now a 2-year-old digital camera is very long in the tooth.
Really?
And the technology is advancing and changing so much, and the cameras now are so incredible. I mean, what they do now, I mean, you could record a Hollywood movie on a digital camera that you can buy in the store. It's that kind of quality, 8K, 4K, 60p. It's really quite advanced. And then, as far as the still photography, in the same piece of equipment, the still photography capabilities are just absolutely incredible. So it's really an exciting time to be part of the business. But it's ironic that as incredible as the technology is, they're selling less than they ever have. So the sales are continue to decline due to the popularity of the iPhone.
Do they still make a Hasselblad? Is that a name?
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, we make their lenses for them.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that
Yes.
like the standard? My dad liked photography when I was a kid, so that was always the dream to get a Hasselblad. Is that a big name?
Yeah, that's a very well respected name. I used to have a Hasselblad medium format camera back before the days of digital. Very good equipment.
That's interesting. Well, tell me, so okay, so let's just say we're in a room of 100, open air preachers, and you want to tell them the camera they need to get to, and I'm being serious, to really capture the depth of what's going on, around them, to report back, legitimately to report back, not just to post stuff, in a sense, but really to try to do the best job you can capturing the environment, what's going on. What would you recommend?
I would probably recommend the, in our line, I'm naturally predisposed towards our products.
Sure, sure.
I think Fuji's cameras are the best there is, especially for the value proposition. But the Fujifilm X-T4 is been our best selling camera for a couple years, and it's very high quality. It's weatherproof. It's very nuts and bolts. It's kind of has a retro sort of design and look, but it's very nuts and bolts photography. Shutter speed is right on top of the camera. The ISO dial is on top of the camera, just like the old cameras of
Yeah.
the 60s and 70s. And you change the aperture right on the lens, just like the old school camera. So it's all very nuts and bolts. And of course, photographers love having that sort of manual control right at your fingertips, so you can actually change all of those settings before you even turn the camera on. But the image quality is astounding, and that's what Fuji is famous for. Is it's perfect right out of the camera. There's no color correcting or anything that needs to be done.
And you were saying that, so what would be the distinctive difference in, the iPhone here, and if whatever that I got 11, I think, or something, and the camera. So if you say, hey, you buy this, you're going to get what? What do you get out of the camera that you're not getting out of the iPhone?
Well, it's a much sharper, clearer image. In fact, you can actually there's a phone app for the camera, and you can operate the camera through your iPhone actually. So if you want to say, you can have your camera set up at, say, the bird feeder out in the backyard, and getting a real close up of birds in action, and you can be operating that camera through your iPhone in your family room, so you're not scaring the birds away. And you can take the picture from your iPhone. You can change a lot of the internal settings from your iPhone, and then you can even save the image to your iPhone. And one thing that's very, very noticeable is when you look at an image that you've taken from your Fuji camera on your iPhone and compare it to the images you've taken with your iPhone that are on the iPhone, the clarity and the sharpness is clearly just, leagues ahead of what the iPhone is capable of.
That's pretty interesting. I've noticed, you take the iPhone picture. We're going to get to Prix in a second, but like I tell somebody to take a group picture, that you have to really zoom in. You have to fill the lens in with your subject, because if you just have some extra space, then the subject certainly is much further back than you really anticipated.
Right.
I don't know how you say that. The depth of perception is off, so you have to sort of compensate for that to get a really good close up with some real good clarity. Is that true?
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's one of the other, you're touching on a real advantage of having a real camera is we have over 40 different lenses, and lenses to capture sporting event, up in a long zoom, you're up in the stands at juniors football game, and you can get right down on top of them on the field, from 200 yards away. Of course, the iPhone, your phone is not, is useless in such a situation.
That's a good point. The last question on that. So this XT4, does it have is it video too, or is it a still?
Very high quality video. It's 4K video, 60 piece or 60 frames a second. It's video. It's Hollywood video camera quality. It's very high quality.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, thanks for sharing about that. That's exciting. Get to know what you do and stuff like that. That's always fun. So preaching. So we probably talked before, but when did you start preaching and evangelizing? Give us a little synopsis of that.
Well, I was fortunate, when I became a Christian. It was early in 2005. I was God had moved me from one church that I had been attending, before I was actually converted for 13 years, and I was looking for a new church, and just as I was being converted, I landed in this new church, and it had some suddenly around true Christians, and a lot of them explained to me, I heard very often and frequently that your life should be focused on the gospel, and a lot of there's going to be a judgment of believers, and it's going to be what you do with the gospel. I heard that quite frequently. So as a brand new believer, it was impressed upon me that I'm supposed to be sharing this message. God's doing these incredible things in me, and it's because I heard the gospel as it was preached, and therefore now I'm supposed to be sharing this message, and it's the means by which God calls other people to Himself. And so it shouldn't end with me. It should be a beginning at that point. So I immediately, very, uncomfortably on plane, because I used to travel a lot for work, and on planes, etc. I would start, I would, make it a point to start talking. Suddenly, I became very friendly with people that normally I would have ignored.
Yeah.
It would have just, mind my own business. But now it became, started conversations and things with the purpose of getting around to the gospel and talking about God, or, and just, like anything else you do, the more often you do it, the better you get at it. And just started doing it and getting comfortable with it, and doing it more and more. And then eventually, we, began going out, and I was up in Toledo, Ohio at the time, but we would go out to particular places, normally the bus stops.
Yeah.
And of course, it was very difficult to find anybody that actually wanted to go out somewhere and share the gospel with you. So it wasn't something that happened very frequently, but we would occasionally go to the mall, and we got thrown out of the Franklin Park Mall for they wouldn't let us have tracts out on a table or anything like that. So we just learned how to do this. But I never saw anybody preaching anywhere in Toledo, Ohio, except towards the end at the bus station. And it was a gentleman that would stand out there and just read scripture is what he would do. So that's kind of the trajectory that I was involved with. And it really wasn't preaching so much. It was just sharing the gospel one-on-one with people, and just going up to people in the mall, because you weren't allowed to preach, but you could approach somebody or sit next to somebody and talk to them, start a conversation about God, if they believed in God, and get to the death and resurrection of Christ, and repentance and faith. And that's what I just developed those skills of having this conversation. And then I was very fortunate when we moved to Texas in 2017. I explained to the church we joined right away that we were interested in evangelizing, and they said, "Well, you need to talk to Tom Sadowski."
No way, really.
So I said, "All right." I introduced myself to Tom, and then he said, "Well, you come on out to the Denton County Square on Saturday night. There's a group of brothers out there every Saturday." So I started immediately, and these guys, it was suddenly, these guys are here every Saturday. It's like, wow, that's impressive. I said, "Well, this is what I've been looking for, for 10 years. It's so suddenly I'm going every Saturday, and able to share the gospel like I had been doing." But there, for the first time, I was exposed to guys actually standing up and preaching.
Right.
And now it seemed it was kind of interesting that to me that that I wasn't comfortable preaching. I had never done that before. And there was plenty of guys standing in line. There was usually 6 or 7 guys that were ready to preach and would take turns. But most of those guys were not really interacting with people as they were walking by, which is the only thing I had ever done. So, so that's what I began doing is immediately, having conversations with people as they're coming and going. And I would stand kind of at the periphery and pursue that. And it was quite a bit different than anything else that anybody was doing there, at the time, in to a large degree. And then it wasn't until I went to my first Super Bowl that I actually did any open air preaching. And I was excited to do it. And but my experience in evangelizing one on one, it really colors how I preach. I'm as opposed to a lot of guys who they want to go through a text and kind of give a sermon almost.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm very much presenting the gospel. It's not the same as talking one on one, but I'm sharing the gospel. Over the microphone is what I'm doing. It's a little bit different than what everybody else does, but I have since I really do enjoy the opportunities at SFOI to preach, over the microphone. It's very exciting.
So are you saying the guys in Denton wouldn't let you preach, Tom and Joe Henson, those guys? Or
No.
they out or?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't beating down the door. I was. There was plenty of them doing that, so I just kind of made myself useful as I could, and that was just. And I still enjoy it. Like I typically on Saturdays I try to get there an hour or so ahead of everybody else, and I'll walk around the courthouse. It's a beautiful old downtown courthouse. It takes up the whole block and it's a great place to evangelize. It's almost like a park, and there's always people sitting on the benches. And I'll have two or three. It's not unusual to have two or three really good gospel conversations before anybody gets there and actually starts preaching. And sometimes it's kind of hard to due to the volume of the speakers or whatnot to actually have conversations. So I like to get there early and have those as quick as I can.
You find Pat and talking to people. So let's see, two questions. One, was there a consistent theme in the personal interaction that you began to learn in that witnessing, that you began to say, hey, here's the issue at hand with people? And a second, how do you think, in a sense, you addressed a little bit there, but how does it affect your understanding of how does that exact revelation affect what you're doing when you are preaching? You said a little bit, but just give me a little more insight into how you apply what you learned, and are you looking for something different when you're standing on the box, they say? Are you, I'm sure you're saying different things, but how did that affect what you're doing when you're preaching?
Well, it's, first of all, when it comes to just evangelizing, I love to help other believers get comfortable sharing the gospel, because the great majority of believers are terrified of sharing the gospel, especially with a stranger, and it's the greatest deception. It's the greatest misconception that there is, because people generally, and it's kind of a surprise to me, they don't mind talking. They like to talk about God. Everybody has an opinion about God, and everybody has thoughts, and I'm as you ask them, the secret is to begin asking questions. Do you believe in God? We're out sharing the good news of Jesus. Do you believe in God? What do you think is going to happen to you when you die? And then it's the big one is like, why do you think? And almost everybody expects they're going to go to heaven. Right. Almost everybody. But when you ask them why, almost no one has any really. I mean, very few people have a very good foundation of why God would let anybody into heaven. And of course, after you've asked these series of questions, you're able to then explain what the Bible says, what the truth of Scripture in regards to the necessity of Christ and being justified, forgiven of your sins, and imputed with His righteousness. What true salvation actually is, and that's, again, most people have no concept of what salvation even is. Yet almost it's the majority of the people we talk to on any given weekend are people that profess to be Christians. So that's all been kind of illuminating and interesting. And as I've gone on, through the years, it's what I always tell people is you really only have about 4 or 5 different types of conversations. It's very unusual to hear something from somebody that you've never heard before.
Yeah.
It's and once you've had all 4 or 5 of these types of conversations, you're ready for anything, really. So it's just very exciting. And the greatest blessing of all, and I love the way you explained it when we were down in the Final Four, is we all have this tendency when we're out sharing the gospel at these events to go home and say, well, the gospel's it's preached, it's over, it's done with. But as you said, it's not over. It's that gospel is the power of God. And I think you mentioned 4 different ways that it continues to bless people after the preaching is all over. And one is the other believers that we see when we're out there is they see what we're doing and they're like, man, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And you give them a quick tutorial and you explain to them how they could do the very same thing in their hometown. And then they're going home, taking the gospel home with these new thoughts. And of course, the unbelievers you're preaching to, that gospel is reverberating in their heart and mind. And that's with them as they go home. And then you mentioned, our family and our church as we leave them and they know we're going someplace to share the gospel. They're encouraged and they're praying for us, and it's kind of it's great to know that there's people praying for you back home and the strength of the gospel and the power of the gospel. And it's just a series of blessings, like waves in a pond is I think the way you described it. But that's a really, really great way of describing it all, and it's just wonderful to be part of.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, Will and I were talking yesterday. I never quite thought about it this way, but we look at it in our cultural and our just like we're here right now. We understand what's going on, but we think of it in terms of the present. But when you get into the text, we're interacting with demoniacs and the Roman centurion, the blind Bartimaeus of the world. I think of the depth of what is transpiring, although it doesn't look that way. It's way beyond what is in the text. You see a point where we are living it out. It's happening in front of us. And,
right.
Even the one-on-one conversations you're bringing eternity into this moment with this other human being. That's pretty powerful idea. If you, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, have you? So now we were in New Orleans this year, and let me ask you this. So before we got to Texas, where else do you go in? Do you go to the Square? Do you go anywhere else in the Denton area? Now, you've been to a ball, hadn't you, the Cowboys game?
We would. I've been down with Steve Morin. I think you know Steve, and to AT&T Stadium a few times in the fall. When there's big events. I haven't been. Steve got married recently. Haven't been. We were down there during COVID, but I haven't been down there recently. It's people don't go too many places in Texas in the summer. But I just I'm getting close to retirement. We're getting old, Bill. I know we just figured out we're the same age.
That's true.
And as I'm kind of heading towards the finish line of my career, it's just love the idea of getting more involved with traveling more places and doing these sorts of things. Because I'll have a lot more time and ability to do that.
Cool.
So
awesome, man. Well, we store up treasure in heaven. I think we talk about that forever too. Just the eternal ramifications of laboring in the harvest field, stuff like that. I think the blessings there will be more than what we can imagine. In addition, just to being with it's kind of a crazy idea on one hand to be with a true living God. Just think about being there. And we think of it sort of naturally here, but to be there and what that's going to be like, I don't know if we can get a complete handle on it. So
yeah,
it'll be worthwhile. That's my point. Whatever we're doing, it's going to be worthwhile.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the what I always tell people as I'm trying to encourage them to come out with us and share the gospel is it's the most worth every Saturday night. It's to go home and it's like that's the most worthwhile thing I'll do all week. And it just fills you with such
No,
joy
no, yeah.
that it's not a fear. It's just the opposite of what everybody thinks it is. It is pure joy to when you're arm in arm in working with Christ, and calling people to Himself. He's there with you,
Right.
and you just get this joy that is just. I believe it's evangelizing is a means of grace. God blesses us through it, and it's just pure joy to be doing something with Him like that. And maybe it's the closest thing to heaven, to the presence of Christ that we get until we're actually there in front of Him.
That's good. That's good. All right, a couple more questions. We got a couple more, and then we'll be done. So the first thing, so moving on to Nashville, we talked what a couple months ago, and you had seen a sermon by Tim Conway, and
Right.
that really convicted you. We might say, talk about the sermon. Tell us what he said, how it motivated you, which led to you going to Nashville in a couple of weeks, and other things as well. But tell
Right. It's when it comes to and I know God says that he's going to there are rewards for obedience and for this and that, but really when it comes to evangelizing and what we have received in Christ, going out for a couple hours on a Saturday night is the bare minimum as far as I'm concerned, and it's like the bottom rung of the ladder, and it just feels like the very least that I ought to be doing, and it's like I mentioned, it's a joy to be there. But we on Easter morning, we were at our church hosts a fellowship conference,
okay.
and there's 800 or 900 Christians come from all over, some of them from overseas, but all over the country, and they stay in this Christian camp, so to speak, right on the shores of Grapevine Lake and outside of Denton. And there's a number of speakers that come every year. It's for like 4 days, and 3 or 4 days, and this year Tim Conway was one of them, and he preached Easter morning. It's always Easter weekend that they do the fellowship conference, and he delivered this sermon that was. You know, he's I didn't know Tim. I didn't know of his reputation, but he is a street preacher. He used to pastor a church in San Antonio. He now has started a church in Birmingham, England, and he street preaches over there. And everything he sounded. I heard the sermon I've been waiting to hear for 15 years.
Really?
Just really throwing down the gauntlet and challenging people, to evangelize, that God expects you to do this, men and women alike, that nobody has been given a pass. This is just what we're supposed to do. And we ought to be about this business of the kingdom, of sharing the gospel. It's why He has left us here. And he advised us, exhorted us, don't get caught up in the world. Don't get caught up in living for your vacations and your 401k. Get caught up in the kingdom. And my wife and I went home, and here we had planned our second national park trip of the year, and so we said he's right. We're already sucked into this vacation thing. Two of them in the same year. We don't need another vacation. So yeah, we were happy, to cancel it. And I said, and I'd already, had been to the Final Four, and I had been telling every time I come home, it's like the only thing I can think of is I want to do that again. That was awesome. I want to do that again. I want more of this. It's always so encouraging. It's such a blessing to be part of it. So it's like, I started looking at the SFOI site, and like, what else can what fits into my schedule? And I just stopped. The Nashville event was the one that I could fit in. I didn't have anything, looking like it was going to conflict right there. So if I'm not mistaken, I think I was the first guy to contact you about getting signed up. It's like, put me on the list. I'm in. And so, I just would like to do something like this every few months, as much as possible. And looking forward to the Super Bowl for sure. But that sermon was powerful, and it was convicting. What I just was motivating for me to not lose sight of what really gives me happiness and joy, and what really has eternal value.
So just elaborate a little bit on the, in this case, being with us, being with Sports Fan and then the Final Four of the Super Bowl, just a little more detail about what happens to make it such a joyful time for you, and give us some details about that.
Well, it's there's a lot of things it's really, what you said before about all the different ways we're all blessed, the way the gospel goes out, and all of these different types of conversations that you have while you're out there. It's and just being part of a crew of believers, and you're just saturated with the gospel for 3 days, and it's all just it's wonderful to be part of. I tell my wife, it's like Bill had us up at 4:30 today. It's like Christian boot camp. But I'm kind of predisposed to that. I really enjoy the challenge, and just being into it all day. It's all really a tremendous part of the blessing.
Yeah, like I'll share this with you. I guess it was 2008. Is that what it was? I'm losing track of time. 7 or 8. So about 6 of us went to the Super Bowl. This is really about fellowship. That's the point of the story. Anyway, so we this is before the Super Bowl. It's like it is now. And so we stayed at a guy's house, and so had a great weekend. And I guess it was 2008. And so I was sitting there on Monday morning before we flew back, and man, I started sort of tearing up a little bit. I thought, what in the world? And I was just, had that sort of sadness from after the weekend was over, and I just thought, this is fellowship. I never really experienced it in that way, and so part of my point is the difference between preaching together and then spending the weekend together, and that right there to me really, I love it. I love being with the guys, like-minded. That's what you're saying too. And I just found that to be, I'd never experienced anything like that. So I think a lot of times when we get together and we're all like-minded, and that is the depth of that is a brand new experience for us.
Right.
You agree with that?
And what's really interesting in particular about that subject is that everybody, what has become apparent to me is that everybody that's in there, there's 73 guys at the Super Bowl, and every single one of them has the same sort of background, the same story, in that we started evangelizing and couldn't get anybody in our church to go with us. We felt like we were the only one, and now we're all in a room together. Isn't this great? And it's that sort. It's a very kind of exclusive club, and it's all of the teaching was great. I remember Heath gave a great lesson at the Super Bowl and about Ephesians 4 and the office of evangelist and how it's lost, and it was very informative and very affirming. The teaching, it was all that we heard was about that, but that fellowship with like-minded guys that are out there sharing the gospel. I don't know if you recall, there was a couple young men that it was their first event, and they all they stood up and said the same thing. We thought we were the only ones. We've been doing this all. We're so grateful to be part of this. We're so grateful to be here. We just can't believe there's this many of you guys.
That's great, man. That's cool. That's so cool. Well, that's great, Pat. Well, thanks. Anything else to share, either about a prior trip or about just you in general? Anything else you want to share?
No, I can't think of anything. Just praise God for his goodness, his grace, his mercy. We are the most blessed people on the planet, and we're just sharing the message of blessing, and hoping that somebody else will be brought into the fold as a result of it. It's a joy and a blessing, and to be part of this organization, and I'm looking forward to being in Nashville.
Praise the Lord. Yeah, Ben said I think there's about 23 evangelists signed up, so that's a good crowd. This is going to be Nashville's a great city, and just in general, and then the race brings about 100,000 people an extra day, so it's just packed with people. It's a good evangelism. Well, I guess one of the best. Nashville's probably the best, at least southeastern city, for foot traffic all the time out there. So I think you'll enjoy it. And,
Oh, great!
Right there, so it should be fun. Ben does a great job.
Great. Well,
All
sorry
right.
we'll miss you. Sorry we'll miss you there, Bill.
Well, that's true.
Well, if I don't see you beforehand, I guess we'll catch up with you at the Super Bowl.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Lord willing. Well, Pat, great to be with you. Thanks so much. Thanks for the camera tip. I'm going to check it out. And if you ever seriously have any other tips about that on filming and stuff, well, I'd love to hear them, because that's always just a
Let me know if you'd like to borrow one, Bill. I got about 20 of them on the desk behind me. Always put one in your hand for a special trip somewhere. You want to get some good pictures, I'd be happy to send you over something, and we can do a little how-to lesson on the phone.
Okay, sounds good. Pat, thanks so much. You have a good day. Good to be with you.
All right, you too, Bill. Take care, brother.
Hope you guys enjoyed talking to Pat, hearing Pat's story. I love these things, how just what you hear in these stories is God working. You know, the mighty works of God we see in the book of Acts, when the Spirit of God is poured out at Pentecost, Spirit speaking, the mighty work of God working in the heart of a man to make him a new creature. It's an astounding idea to think about, and then we get to have it happen to ourselves and see the lives of other Christians, in this case, other men who are lives. I love hearing these stories. So thanks for tuning in. All right, friend, listen, life is but a vapor. Get out there and preach the gospel somewhere. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.